運が悪かったんだよ、お前らは。
It just doesn't feel like the good old days of the PS2. I've got this style switching now, it's so weird, I don't like it. Yeah, so one of those supposed to lose fights where even if you win, it doesn't actually matter. Because you were supposed to lose anyway, to justify this forced gameplay mechanic. Yeah, so here's where it starts. So, like Majima said, he's gonna be on our ass for the rest of the game. And that starts what's called the Majima Everywhere system, which means as we go through the game, as we're just wandering the map, we're gonna have to deal with random encounters with Majima, which means we're gonna have to fight a boss fight against Majima hundreds of times. And I'm not exaggerating, it really is that many times. And you have to fight Majima over and over and over again in order to level up the Dragon of Dojima style. With your other styles, you can level them up just by leveling up throughout the game, by getting a lot of experience and then spending them. But if you want to level up the Dragon of Dojima, you have to fight Majima. The only way to get experience with the Dragon of Dojima is by fighting Majima. And it's fucking bad. I don't like it. It's really annoying. It's a huge grind fest. And it means that if you're not spending hours of your time fighting Majima throughout the game, you're gonna end the game with a really shitty Dragon of Dojima style. And I think that's a huge bummer. The reliance on the sequelization of this game taking so much from Yakuza 0 means that the gameplay experience of the original game is lost somewhat. It's not all that bad, because you did start out with a very limited, very, very limited moveset in the original PS2 game, and you started out with a 3-hit combo. You had to level up in order to get a 4-hit combo in Yakuza 1 on the PS2. So, it's not that bad, but it is still really annoying to feel like I'm gonna get to the end of the game, but my Dragon of Dojima style sucks ass because I didn't fight Majima 500 times straight. So, as we were saying, in terms of the Yakuza being analogous to the Mafia,
じゃ
yeah, a member of the Mafia killing his boss would be a big deal. And such as it would be for a member of the Yakuza. That is pretty much an instant death warrant. Like Kiryu said at the beginning when he was in prison, he got a letter of expulsion. That's actually very standard if you're sent to prison as a member of the Yakuza. But he got, what he said is he was expecting a letter of being completely banished, which would basically mean kill this man on sight, right? Even if he were to get out of prison. But of course, you kill a patriarch, like a Dawn, basically, of the Yakuza.
お前の方こそ何やってんだ
Yeah, they're gonna have someone try and kill you in prison. And that's what happened, obviously.
今日は殺人事件もあったし、怪しい奴がいたら片っ端から声かけろって。
そうなんだまあいいならお前この辺の情報屋の一人や二人
But then again, it is still a little suspicious, isn't it? It's kind of a non-standard situation. Kiryu was expecting to be banished, but all he did was get expelled. And it was the leader of the Tojo clan who said, nah, just expel him. And then he sent an assassin after the guy. What's that all about? And then, as far as we can tell, after that one assassination attempt on, like, his first day in prison, he just had a peaceful 10 years serving out his sentence to go from there. So, a little bit of a mystery in terms of Kiryu's story, to be sure, but we can take it in in context of normal expectations for what would actually happen to members of the Yakuza in Japan. Because it is something that happens all the time, is members of the Yakuza just go into jail like crazy, like it's a revolving door kind of thing. Something that would be very common, ignoring the fact that the person who was killed was Dojima, who was like a leader of a family. Let's say that's another thing with the Yakuza, is they are always very careful about having plausible deniability. In the Mafia, you'll say, like, we're gonna put a hit out on this guy. Like, get someone to go kill this guy. Whereas in the Yakuza, it might be more along the lines of, there's, like, the boss is around his underlings, and might say, oh man, you know, that politician was giving me the stink eye last time I talked to him. He's really pissing me off. That guy, he's been causing me a lot of problems. And that would be taken as like an unspoken order of, I want that guy fucking killed. But they can't actually say out loud, go fucking kill that guy, because then they'd be able to rat and say, my boss ordered me to kill that guy. But by saying, oh no, I just said I didn't like the guy, and this enterprising young buck trying to make his way up in the organization decided to make his boss happy and go out and kill the guy that his boss said he didn't like. All on his own. So it's ways like that that members, that the Yakuza try and, like, avoid the kind of police activity that's taken down La Cosa Nostra. But it is incredibly common that if there's any kind of violent crime, especially, that takes place between Yakuza members, what they'll do is, well, the way it kind of used to be, or the traditional romanticized expectation would be that the killer would turn himself in and say, like, yep, I did it, and I did it all on my own. I wasn't ordered to do it. It was all me. And then he'd obviously get arrested, and he would get a letter of expulsion saying you're no longer in the family because you're in prison now. It's, again, plausible deniability saying, like, look, we don't condone his actions. We're a legitimate organization. We don't condone the crime he committed. And then you serve your sentence. And then what's supposed to happen is once you get out of prison, you're supposed to get inducted back into the family, first of all, and get a promotion, basically. You're supposed to be rewarded for taking the initiative and, you know, serving out your sentence for the sake of the family, and you're supposed to get rewarded by getting promoted to become an executive within the organization. Of course, the reality of the situation is that what more often than not happens is a violent crime gets committed, you know, shooting of another gang leader or something like that, and then the actual shooter will probably just convince some low-ranking kid, some affiliate, basically, to turn himself in and take credit for it, so that the guy who actually killed him doesn't have to go to jail, and they'll make all the same promises and say, oh, once you get out, you'll get a promotion, when in reality, they just sold that kid up the river, and now, you know, forget about him. You know, who cares? He was just a disposable henchman that they could throw to the legal wolves.
堂島さんが死んだ時もあんな感じでしたからね。
誰が殺したんだ?
Of course, in context of this game, that even the romanticized ideal of Kiryu getting out of prison and then being inducted back into the family and getting his promotion is not in the cards because the person who went to jail for killing was Dojima, who was a Yakuza family leader. So there's obviously going to be a lot of bad blood in terms of what he did, even though he's out of prison and now technically out of the life. So he's not a Yakuza anymore. And that's one of the reasons people say they shouldn't have titled these games Yakuza in English, because Kiryu starts like the first 10 minutes of the game as a Yakuza member, and then he's not a Yakuza anymore. He's not in organized crime, he's not a member, he does not do the crimes. So you're not playing as a member of the Yakuza, so therefore the game should not be titled Yakuza. Because that's how that works. I mean, let's ignore the fact that the character still identifies himself as being, you know, carrying the romanticized idea of the Yakuza spirit. Let's ignore the fact that the plots of all the games revolve around Yakuza conspiracies and conflicts, and 80% of the characters in the games are members of the Yakuza, and the iconography and romanticization of the Yakuza as an organization is a major factor in every single one of these games. Now let's ignore that. Kiryu is not a Yakuza, is not a pin-wearing member of the Yakuza anymore. So clearly, it's foolish and foolhardy to claim that the game should be titled Yakuza. Am I right? That's real descriptive. Host Club? No? You're old, crusty old Kiryu. I reiterate, this game came out in 2005. Although I did read a book that was set in Japan during the 90s where the concept of a host club was also, like, treated as like a what?
オーナーの和樹に用があるんだ。
あんたどこの組のやつだ？あ？島の組だろ。俺らは誰の世話にもならねえんだよ。
何の話だ。俺は和樹を探してるだけだ。どの組の人間でもない。
ざけんなよ俺。一目見りゃわかんだよ。どこどう見たって黒道マンだろうが。てめ
We don't need no fucking Yakuza.
和樹さんに何しよってんだ。
おいおい、別に俺はお前らと喧嘩するために来たんじゃねえんだ。
なめんなよこれ。ヤクザって言え何でも片付くと思ってんじゃねえぞ。この町でもな、ヤクザの言いなりにならないで自分の力だけで一生懸命生きてる奴らもいるんだよ。少なくとも和樹さんはそうやってのし上がったんだ。てめえらヤクザに和樹さんの邪魔をさせね
だから俺はヤクザじゃねえって。人の話聞かねえやつだな。
え。うるせえ。俺はこの店命がけで守るんだ。
Oh, the humble origins of the PS2. Cutscenes like that really kind of don't work with the new graphics system. They really make a lot more sense as humble PlayStation cutscenes. Oh, for fuck's sake. Swear to God, every single time. Oh hey, I recognize that animation. Kiwami means extreme! That's what the tutorial said. Those special finisher animations. Son of a bitch. Those special finisher animations when the boss goes into a downed state like that. The tutorial said Kiwami means extreme. It's not that these games are like hard or anything. That's not the. It's not like playing on New Game Plus makes them a cakewalk, and otherwise I'd have to deal with all this, you know, challenge. It's just a lot more convenient, especially for this first game. I don't like switching between the styles. I would rather try and just stick to the Dragon of Dojima style for the entire game, as something that's more representative of what the gameplay of the original game was like. The style switching and stuff like that worked for Yakuza 0. I don't really... like... Yakuza 1 was not designed with that in mind. I think it takes away a little bit. Again, it's one of those things where it's an addition that does take away from the experience of the original game.
風間さんにはこの店開いた時から世話になってます。見かじめも取らず、商売のいろはもわからない俺にいろいろ教えてくれたんです。今この店があるのもあの人のおかげです。
So one of the themes of this game
店にいらっしゃったんです。
is that
大事な人を迎えたいからこの店を使わせてほしいって。
there is almost an element of fate, the implication of you know, a preordained plan for Kiryu in his life that got, you know, totally driven off into a different trajectory because of one decision he made one fateful night. At the beginning of the game, Kiryu was all slated to... Yeah, so I hope you got your fill of Chairman Sarah. He was in literally one scene and then walked off screen and got killed off screen. I hope you care. I hope you cared about that character. One of the limitations of the original game's story, to be sure. And like the scenes seem to imply, up until a certain point, particularly with the new scenes that were added, Kiryu wasn't necessarily interested in having his own family. That seemed like it was something that was more foisted upon him by the expectations of his father figure, who was Kazuma. It seemed like implied that Kazuma was pulling all these strings to try and make the Kiryu family happen, even though Kiryu himself didn't really seem all that interested in it. So the wheels of fate that were turning were for Kiryu to get his own family and remain a Yakuza bigwig if Kazuma's plans had remained in effect, if he had his way. And we'll see as we go through the series the web that Kazuma has spun in order to assert his influence across the franchise and across the characters in it are very expansive. Even characters like Kazuki here with his club is something that is stated to have been set up by Kazuma and is now being used to help support Kiryu now that he's out of prison. So he's almost like the Japanese Yakuza Batman, where he has contingencies and backup plans littered throughout the franchise as we go forward, even well after he leaves the story. But there is that implication of, like, this is what was meant to happen for Kiryu. Even at the beginning where Kazama was like, no, don't go. Whatever's gonna happen, you need to let it happen. If you go, it's just gonna make it worse for all three of you. You need to stay here. Kazuma's plan for Kiryu was for him to not go to prison and get his own family. It's almost as if the fate that had been preordained for Kiryu and for Nishiki was that Nishiki would be the one who would go to jail. Nishiki would be the one who killed Dojima, which he did, and suffer the consequences for it. And Kiryu would still be around in order to pick up the remnants of the Dojima family and replace it with his own Kiryu family. And there's almost this, like, implication that things would have gone a lot better for everyone if that had been what happened. It would have gone a lot better for maybe even Nishiki. It would have gone a lot better for Kiryu. It would have been more in line with what Kazuma's plans for everyone involved were. The Dojima family and its members all would have been a lot better off. And all the conflict that kind of happens throughout the game as, you know, the story progresses forward from here would not have taken place. But, even regardless of that, part of the story that is actually even supported by Yakuza 0, which is one of the few things I like about Yakuza 0 as a prequel, is if Kiryu had continued on the path that his father figure, Kazuma, had laid out for him, he would never have become his own man. He would never have asserted his own ideals. He would have just lived out the fate that was ordained for him by his father. But by making his own decision and sacrificing his freedom and his future for the sake of his brother, Nishiki, he asserted his own independence. And the ripples of that decision created waves that would carry on throughout the next decade of his life and the life of everyone else involved with him. Oh, actually 20 years, sorry, because I forgot that we skipped forward from 1995 to 2005. You've got a jacket and everything. You got a trench coat.
桐生さん、さっきの続きなんですが、風間組を裏切って内部を割った人。錦山さんなんです。
錦だと。
関西の5代目近江連合の本部長寺田をバックに、錦山さんはずっと 独立の算段してたんです。
近江連合。
兄貴、俺は今錦山組の射程頭なんです。
どういうことなんだ。
兄貴、錦のおじきはもう昔のあの人じゃなくなっちまったんです。だから風間のおやっさんは心配して組の様子を見張るために俺を錦山組に送ったんです。
シンジ、おやっさんは俺に話があると言っていた。すぐにでも会えないか。
明日は本部で3代目の葬儀が。おやっさんもその場を離れることはできません。それに100億の件もあって。
何の話だ。
登場界の金庫から100億抜かれていたそうなんです。緊急幹部会でその話が出た直後に3代目が殺されました。
Suspicious.
明日は葬儀場にいるんだな。
ええ。
まさか行く気ですか。でもまた島の組の連中に見つかったら。
和樹、言うだけ無駄なんだ、こういう時のこの人は。
Even his voice actor is like putting a different slant on his voice. The voice acting is actually really good in these games, even though I can't fucking understand Japanese. Get downloadable content from Bob Utsunomiya. Yeah, so that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, isn't it? The man that Kiryu went to jail and sacrificed his future for in order to protect ended up going down the dark side, and Yumi went missing, and we never got an update on that. So it almost feels like Kiryu putting himself on the line and taking the fall for Nishiki made everything worse for everyone involved. Yumi went missing, Nishiki became an asshole, Kiryu got 10 years in the fucking slammer and nothing to show for it.
10年で仮出所。
あの喧嘩っ早かった兄貴が10年間喧嘩ゼロとは。ま、そんなところも兄貴らしいですね。全然お変わりなくて安心しましたよ。
変わってないか。
あれ、どうかしました？
実はここに来る前、ある男から。
Yeah, so this is obviously all new dialogue. I don't resent new additions to the game, even though it's a remake. I mean, like, to a degree, I like the idea of creators going back to their original release and, you know, using the new technology and resources that they have available to them to create a new experience that's closer to what their original vision might have been. Because the development of the original game was definitely very slapdash and very, you know, very much an unproven experiment. They went over budget constantly. It was a big deal. So I don't resent the idea of them going back and saying, okay, now with all we've learned, let's do it again, but better this time. It's not the idea, it's the execution.